If you ever wake up and find a message written by your own hand that you never wrote, do not assume you are losing your mind. Jason Miller woke up at 5:17 in the morning to the sound of rain tapping softly against his apartment window. The room was dark except for the faint blue glow of a digital clock resting on the nightstand. He rolled onto his back and stared at the ceiling for a few seconds, trying to convince himself that getting out of bed before sunrise was a good life choice. It never worked. Across the room, a pile of gym clothes sat neatly folded beside a duffel bag. Jason had spent the last 5 years building a routine that rarely changed. Wake up early. Train. Coach clients. Train again. Eat too much chicken. Sleep. Repeat. Simple. Predictable. Safe. He rubbed his eyes and swung his legs over the side of the bed. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. Something felt strange. He could not explain it. The feeling lingered as he walked toward the bathroom. Maybe it was the weather. Maybe it was the dream he could barely remember. Whatever it was, the sensation followed him through the doorway. Jason flipped on the bathroom light. Bright white illumination flooded the room. He froze instantly. A message had been written across the fogged bathroom mirror. 4 words. Large. Uneven. Impossible. Do not panic. Jason stared at the reflection. His brain refused to process what he was seeing. He lived alone. Nobody else had access to the apartment. He slowly looked around the bathroom. Empty. He checked behind the shower curtain. Empty. He opened the cabinet beneath the sink. Also empty, which was disappointing because if someone had been hiding there, at least the mystery would have made sense. He returned his attention to the mirror. The words remained. Do not panic. Jason laughed nervously. Well, that is never a good sign. He stepped closer. The writing looked fresh. Moisture still clung to the letters. Someone had clearly written it recently. Except there was no someone. A strange chill moved down his spine. Then he noticed something worse. His right hand was covered in condensation. Jason slowly raised it. Tiny droplets of water clung to his fingers. His stomach dropped. He looked from the hand to the mirror and back again. No. He shook his head. Absolutely not. His right hand twitched. Jason froze. The movement had not been intentional. Every muscle in his body became rigid. The hand twitched again, then slowly lifted. On its own. Jason watched in horror as his own arm moved toward the mirror. His left hand immediately grabbed his right wrist. Nope. The hand continued moving. Jason held on tighter. Nope. 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 Somehow the hand kept advancing. Not forcefully. Not aggressively. Just calmly. Like it had somewhere important to be. The tip of his index finger touched the fogged glass. Jason felt every sensation. Every movement. Yet he was not controlling any of it. The finger began writing. One letter at a time. J, L, L. Oh, Jason stared at the new word. Hello. Silence filled the bathroom. Rain tapped softly against the apartment window. Somewhere outside, a car drove past. Everything felt completely normal except for the fact that his hand had apparently decided to become its own person. Jason swallowed hard. Okay. The finger moved again. Yes. You can hear me? Jason asked. Yes. Jason sat down on the closed toilet lid before his legs could give up entirely. The hand waited patiently. He stared at it. It stared back in the only way a hand could. Several long seconds passed. Then Jason asked the only question that mattered. Who are you? The finger moved immediately. N. Y. R. A. Jason read the name twice. Naira. It sounded unfamiliar. Foreign. Strange. Before he could ask another question, his right hand suddenly lifted and wrote one final sentence across the mirror. The letters appeared slowly. Almost carefully. I know this looks bad. Jason blinked. Then, despite every alarm bell ringing inside his head, he laughed. Because somehow that was the most concerning part of all. Whatever Naira was, whatever had happened during the night, whatever impossible explanation waited beyond that bathroom mirror, it apparently possessed enough self-awareness to understand first impressions. And that terrified him far more than the moving hand ever could. Jason spent the next 10 minutes conducting what he later described as the least scientific investigation in human history. First, he asked his right hand whether he was dreaming. The hand picked up a dry erase marker from the bathroom counter and wrote an O on the mirror. Then it added sadly. Jason stared at the message. That is not reassuring. The hand shrugged. Somehow. He did not know how a hand managed to shrug, but it did. Jason paced across the apartment while his right arm occasionally waved as if trying to get his attention. Rain continued tapping against the windows. Outside, the city was slowly waking up. Inside, reality had apparently taken a day off. Okay, Jason said finally. Let us start with the basics. What are you? His right hand grabbed a notepad from the kitchen counter and began writing. The handwriting was surprisingly elegant. Scout unit. Jason frowned. Scout for what? The marker moved again. Exploration. Exploration of Earth? Yes. Jason rubbed his face with his left hand. And you live in my arm now? Temporarily. Define temporarily. Unknown. That is not a definition. Correct. Jason groaned and dropped into a chair. The hand patiently waited. Whatever Naira was, she seemed remarkably calm about the entire situation. Jason, on the other hand, was beginning to feel as though calm had become a luxury item. The marker moved again. You are responding better than expected. Jason looked at the sentence. What exactly were you expecting? Screaming. Fainting. Running into walls. People run into walls? Sometimes. Jason stared at the message. How many humans have you met? The hand paused. Then slowly wrote a single word. None. Silence filled the apartment. Jason blinked twice. You have never met a human before? First direct contact. Jason pointed at himself. Me. Yes. He leaned back in his chair and laughed. Not because anything was funny, because somehow that answer made everything worse. Humanity's first official alien contact had apparently happened inside a one-bedroom apartment, with a gym trainer wearing sweatpants. History would never forgive him. The marker moved again. You appear disappointed. I am processing. Understood. Another pause followed. Then the hand wrote something unexpected. You have a very strange species. Jason looked up. You have known us for 20 minutes. 27 minutes. Jason checked the clock. The hand was correct. That annoyed him for reasons he could not explain. What makes us strange? The marker moved immediately. You lift heavy objects for recreation. Jason opened his mouth, then closed it again. Fair point. You consume beverages containing stimulants. Coffee. Yes. Why? Jason stared at the sentence. Because mornings exist. The hand paused for several seconds, then wrote understandable. Against all logic, Jason felt himself smiling. The situation remained completely insane. Yet there was something oddly human about the conversation. Or maybe that was the problem. Naira was not behaving like an invading alien intelligence. She sounded like a curious exchange student trapped inside his nervous system. A sudden vibration interrupted the moment. Jason's phone lit up on the kitchen counter. A reminder notification appeared. Client session. 6:30 a.m. Jason looked at the phone, then at his hand, then back at the phone. I have work. The hand immediately wrote, so do I. No, you absolutely do not. Disagree. Jason stood and walked toward the bedroom. Listen carefully. I coach people. Real people. They already think fitness trainers are weird. I cannot show up with a possessed arm. The hand pointed at itself. Offensive terminology. You know what I mean. Yes. Naira's handwriting appeared again. I will observe. Jason stopped halfway through changing clothes. Observe. Data collection. Jason sighed. Of course. Alien Scout. Data collection. That part at least made sense. What did not make sense was why she seemed fascinated by ordinary life. Most invading species in movies started with military installations. Naira apparently wanted information about protein shakes and leg day. 30 minutes later, Jason stepped out of his apartment and headed toward the gym. Morning traffic moved through the city beneath gray skies. People hurried toward offices. Delivery trucks crossed intersections. Nothing seemed unusual. Yet every few seconds his right hand twitched slightly as Naira reacted to something new. A dog walked past. Interesting. A city bus stopped nearby. Very large transport unit. A man dropped his breakfast sandwich. Tragic. Jason looked down at his hand. You are enjoying this far too much. The hand immediately gave him a thumbs up. And for the first time since waking up, Jason began to suspect that the greatest threat to his sanity was not the alien living inside his arm. It was her personality. Jason normally loved the gym before sunrise. The place felt different when it was nearly empty. Cleaner. Quieter. More honest. Nobody came at 6 in the morning to impress strangers. They came because they wanted results. Unfortunately, this particular morning included an alien scout living inside his right arm. The automatic doors slid open as he entered Iron Forge Fitness. The familiar scent of rubber flooring, disinfectant, and freshly cleaned equipment greeted him immediately. Rows of machines stretched across the building beneath bright industrial lighting. A few dedicated members were already working through their routines. Music played softly through ceiling speakers. Everything looked normal. Jason desperately wanted normal. His right hand immediately pointed at a treadmill. Interesting. Jason sighed. It is a treadmill. Many of your people appear to run without going anywhere. That is technically accurate. Highly inefficient. Jason grabbed a towel and headed toward the training floor. His first client arrived a few minutes later. Mike was a 45-year-old accountant attempting to lose 30 pounds before his daughter's wedding. Good guy. Terrible posture. Morning, coach, Mike said. Morning. Jason forced a smile. Behind his back, his right hand waved enthusiastically. Fortunately, Mike did not notice. They began warming up near the free weights section. Jason explained the workout while secretly monitoring his own arm. So far, Naira seemed content to observe. Then Mike picked up a dumbbell. Jason felt an immediate twitch in his hand. Extraordinary. He nearly jumped. The voice had not come from writing. It had appeared directly inside his mind. Clear. Female. Calm. Jason almost dropped his clipboard. Did you just talk? He whispered. Mike looked confused. What? Jason coughed. Nothing. Inside his head, Naira sounded pleased. This communication method is more efficient. Jason stared straight ahead. You can do that? Apparently. Apparently. First contact is a learning experience for everyone. Jason suddenly understood why advanced civilizations probably had human resources departments. The next hour became one of the most difficult coaching sessions of his life. Every exercise generated questions. Every interaction generated commentary. Mike completed a set of squats. Impressive lower body strength. Thank you, Jason accidentally replied aloud. Mike looked confused again. I did not say anything. Right. Jason smiled weakly. Across the room, another client greeted him. Naira immediately began analyzing social behavior. Why are they smiling? Because they are being friendly. Why? Because that is what people do. Even when they want nothing. Especially then. A long pause followed. Fascinating. By 8 o'clock the gym had become crowded. Equipment clanked. Conversations filled the air. Members moved between workout stations while televisions displayed morning news broadcasts. Jason was helping a college athlete improve deadlift form when something unexpected happened. A young woman accidentally dropped her water bottle near the stretching area. Before Jason could react, his right hand picked it up and handed it back. Automatically, the woman smiled. Thanks. Jason froze. He had not moved. Naira had. You are welcome, she said inside his mind. Jason waited until the woman walked away. What was that? Assistance. You cannot just take control whenever you feel like it. I returned a container. Jason pinched the bridge of his nose. That is not the point. Yet secretly, he could not argue with the result. The interaction had been harmless. Helpful even. The realization bothered him. Around noon his final client finished training. Jason retreated into his small office near the back of the gym and closed the door. Sunlight filtered through narrow windows overlooking the parking lot. For the first time all day, silence returned. Or at least relative silence. Naira remained unusually quiet. Jason sat at his desk. What are you thinking about? Another pause. Then her voice appeared. Your species is confusing. Jason laughed. Join the club. You compete constantly. You argue. You waste energy. You create unnecessary problems. Also accurate. Yet you continue helping each other. Jason leaned back in his chair. The question sounded genuine, curious rather than judgmental. That part surprises you? Yes. Jason thought about it. Through the office window he could see Mike leaving the gym. The accountant looked exhausted. Happy. Proud of himself. A teenager nearby held the door open for an elderly member carrying gym equipment. Nobody had asked him to do it. He simply did. Jason smiled. Maybe helping each other is how we survive all the other nonsense. Silence followed. Longer this time. Then Naira spoke again. Her voice sounded different somehow. Softer. Those were not the reports I received. Jason frowned. Reports. Another pause. Then 4 words changed everything. My mission involves humanity. Jason stared at the office wall for several seconds. The sounds of the gym continued outside as though nothing unusual had happened. Weights clanked. People laughed. Music played through ceiling speakers. Ordinary life carried on while his understanding of reality quietly collapsed for the 4th time that day. He looked down at his right hand. What exactly does that mean? A long silence followed. For the first time since arriving, Naira seemed hesitant. That worried him more than anything she could have said. Finally her voice returned. My purpose is to evaluate your species. Jason folded his arms. Evaluate for what? Another pause. Then a decision is made. He immediately disliked the way she phrased that sentence. What kind of decision? The office suddenly felt smaller. Naira remained silent. Jason waited. Seconds stretched into nearly a minute. Then words appeared in his mind with uncomfortable clarity. Whether humanity represents a threat. Jason leaned back in his chair. The answer landed heavily. Not because it was dramatic. Because it sounded official. Clinical. Like a process that had existed long before either of them were born. Outside the office window, sunlight reflected off parked cars. Somewhere nearby a client laughed at a joke. The normalcy of the world felt strange now. You are serious? Yes. Jason rubbed his forehead. And if humanity is considered a threat? Silence. Then a response. I do not know the details. I am a scout, not a commander. Jason looked down at his hand again. Oddly enough, that answer made him feel slightly better. At least Naira was being honest. So let me get this straight. He stood and began pacing. You arrived here to gather information about Earth. Correct. You attached yourself to my nervous system. Temporarily. You keep saying temporarily like that makes it better. It is technically accurate. Jason ignored the comment. And eventually your people review your findings. Yes. Another silence settled over the room. Then Jason asked the question that mattered most. What did your reports say about us before you arrived? This time the hesitation lasted longer. When Naira finally answered, her voice sounded quieter than before. Violent. Jason frowned. That is not entirely wrong. Aggressive. Also not entirely wrong. Unpredictable. Jason laughed softly. Okay, that one is definitely true. Naira continued. Self-destructive. Tribal. Primitive. Dangerous. The words echoed inside his mind. None of them were flattering. Yet none felt completely false either. Humanity had earned plenty of criticism over the centuries. Jason sat back down. And after one day? Another pause followed. Then something unexpected happened. His right hand picked up a pen from the desk. Slowly, carefully, it began writing on a spare workout sheet. Jason watched in silence. The handwriting was elegant as always. Confusing. He stared at the word. Confusing. Yes. The pen moved again. You display competitive behavior while encouraging each other to succeed. Jason smiled despite himself. The pen continued. You form attachments to non-essential organisms. Pets, Jason said. Yes. You experience emotional distress when strangers suffer. The pen paused. You help each other even when there is no direct benefit. Jason looked down at the page. The observations felt strangely personal. Less like scientific data and more like someone trying to solve a puzzle. Maybe humanity is complicated. Naira considered that. Complicated is not the word I would choose. Jason laughed. Before he could respond, a loud crash echoed somewhere outside the office. Both of them reacted instantly. Jason stepped into the hallway and found one of his younger clients standing beside a toppled stack of exercise mats. The teenager looked embarrassed. "Sorry, coach." Jason helped him pick everything up. "No problem." Within 30 seconds the situation was resolved. Nobody was angry. Nobody blamed anyone. The teenager thanked him and returned to training. Jason walked back into the office. Naira remained silent for several moments. Then she asked a question. "Why did you help him?" Jason blinked. "Because he needed help. There was no advantage to you." "Not everything has to be an advantage." Another long silence followed. Jason sat down. The afternoon sun shifted across the office floor. Beyond the walls, life continued. People trained, improved themselves, encouraged each other. Ordinary things, human things. Finally Naira spoke again. Her voice sounded different somehow. Thoughtful, almost uncertain. "The data does not match." Jason leaned back in his chair. "What data?" "Everything I was taught." For the first time since they met, Jason sensed genuine doubt in her voice. Not fear. Not confusion. Doubt. The kind that appears when reality refuses to follow expectations. He looked down at his right hand and smiled slightly. "Welcome to Earth, Naira." The hand slowly lifted, then gave him a thumbs up. Over the next 3 days, Jason learned that sharing a body with an alien scout was somehow both less dramatic and more exhausting than any science fiction movie had ever suggested. Naira observed everything. Absolutely everything. She analyzed conversations, studied routines, questioned social customs with relentless curiosity. By the second day she had developed strong opinions about traffic, grocery stores, and reality television. Jason regretted introducing her to reality television almost immediately. "They are competing to bake desserts," Naira said one evening while he prepared dinner. "Yes. And this is considered entertainment? Very popular entertainment. Humanity continues to confuse me." Jason smiled as he chopped vegetables. Their conversations had become strangely normal. Not normal in the traditional sense. Normal in the sense that he no longer jumped every time a voice appeared inside his head. The adjustment disturbed him slightly. A week earlier he would have considered telepathic conversations impossible. Now he was arguing with an extraterrestrial life form about cooking competitions. Life moved quickly. Yet beneath the humor, Naira continued gathering data. Jason noticed it during training sessions, during family phone calls, during random interactions with strangers. She paid attention to moments most people ignored. A customer holding the door open for another customer. A teenager helping an elderly woman carry groceries. Friends supporting each other through difficult days. Tiny acts of kindness seemed to fascinate her more than major world events. One afternoon, after finishing a long training session, Jason sat outside a coffee shop watching people move through the city. The weather had finally improved. Sunlight reflected from office windows. Traffic rolled steadily through intersections. Children played in a nearby park. Ordinary life. Naira remained unusually quiet. Jason noticed immediately. "You are thinking." "Always. You know what I mean." A brief pause followed. Then "Yes. I am thinking." Jason leaned back in his chair. "About what?" Another pause. Then her answer arrived. The reports were wrong. Jason took a sip of coffee. "About humanity?" Yes. He had been expecting this conversation. The signs had become obvious. Naira no longer sounded like someone studying an enemy. She sounded like someone trying to understand a mystery. "What exactly were you told?" For several seconds she said nothing. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a seriousness he had not heard before. "My people believe your species is driven by conflict, selfishness, competition." Jason nodded slowly. "Sometimes we are." "Yes, that is the problem." He frowned. "What does that mean?" "You are also the opposite." The answer caught him off guard. Across the street, a man helped someone retrieve dropped papers scattered by the wind. Neither appeared to know the other. The interaction lasted only seconds. Then both continued with their day. Naira noticed it too. You are capable of contradictions that should not exist. Jason laughed softly. Welcome to humanity. She ignored the joke. You compete while cooperating. You fear each other while protecting each other. You disagree constantly yet build things together. Jason looked out across the city. People are complicated. No. Her response arrived immediately. People are impossible. Despite himself, Jason smiled. Yet the conversation remained in his thoughts long after returning home. That night he found himself sitting on the apartment balcony beneath a sky filled with stars. The city glowed below. Traffic lights blinked in the distance. A warm breeze drifted through the darkness. Naira seemed unusually reflective. Finally she spoke again. Jason. Yeah. If the reports are wrong about humanity, what else could be wrong? The question lingered in the silence. Jason considered it carefully. A lot of things. I do not find that comforting. Truth usually is not. Another pause followed. Then something unexpected happened. Memories appeared. Not his memories. Hers. Brief flashes. A metallic city beneath unfamiliar stars. Vast structures stretching across a crimson horizon. Endless rows of identical vessels suspended in orbit. Jason nearly fell out of his chair. What was that? My memory. Naira sounded surprised too. You can show me things? Apparently. Jason stared into the darkness. The images had vanished as quickly as they arrived. Yet one detail remained. A symbol. Sharp. Geometric. Repeated across every structure he had seen. What does it mean? Silence. Longer than usual. Then Naira answered in a voice barely above a whisper. Home. For the first time since she arrived, Jason realized something he should have understood days ago. Naira was not simply studying humanity. She was alone. Millions of miles from everything she had ever known. And suddenly, for reasons he could not fully explain, that realization mattered more than any invasion report ever could. The memory of that distant city stayed with Jason long after the stars disappeared behind morning sunlight. For the rest of the week, fragments continued appearing without warning. Sometimes while he trained clients. Sometimes while driving home. Sometimes in the middle of completely ordinary moments. A metallic skyline beneath crimson clouds. Endless transit corridors illuminated by pale blue light. Towering structures engraved with the same geometric symbol. None of the images lasted more than a second or two. Yet together they painted a picture. Naira came from a civilization far larger than anything he had imagined. One evening after closing the gym, Jason sat alone on a weight bench while cleaning equipment. The building was empty. Rows of machines stood silent beneath fluorescent lights. Rain tapped softly against the windows. He had grown to appreciate these quiet hours. Apparently Naira had too. Your people spend an extraordinary amount of time improving themselves, she said. Jason smiled. That is one way to describe exercise. Not just exercise. He paused. What do you mean? Another memory flickered briefly. Not enough to fully form. Just a sensation. A distant world. Countless identical individuals moving with mechanical precision. No variation. No individuality. No personal goals. Naira's voice returned. Humans constantly change. You change your bodies. Your careers. Your relationships. Your beliefs. Jason set a towel aside. That is called living. We find it unusual. You mean your people do not change? Silence followed. Longer than usual. Then Naira answered. Not often. The response carried something he had never heard before. Regret. Jason sat down. Tell me about your home. Another long pause. For a moment he thought she might refuse. Instead, images flooded his mind more clearly than before. He saw vast cities connected by streams of glowing transportation networks. Enormous orbital structures suspended above entire worlds. Technology beyond anything Earth possessed. Yet beneath the beauty lurked something unsettling. Everything looked identical. Perfectly ordered. Perfectly efficient. Perfectly controlled. There is stability, Naira explained. There is purpose. There is unity. Jason nodded slowly. Sounds impressive. It should have. Yet the memories left him strangely uncomfortable. No laughter. No spontaneous conversations. No children playing. No small imperfections that made life feel alive. Just order. Endless order. And you like it there? The silence that followed answered the question before Naira ever spoke. I used to. Jason frowned. The admission seemed to surprise her as much as it surprised him. Several minutes passed while he finished cleaning equipment. Finally Naira spoke again. Jason. Yeah. Why do humans form friendships? He laughed softly. That is a pretty big question. Answer anyway. Jason considered it while locking up the gym. Outside, rain continued falling beneath streetlights. Cars moved through the darkness. People hurried home after long days. Because life is hard sometimes. Naira remained silent, listening. And it is easier when somebody is there with you. The answer sounded simple, almost childish. Yet it felt true. They walked through the parking lot together. Or rather, Jason walked while Naira occupied his right arm. The distinction felt less important these days. By the time he reached his apartment, the rain had intensified. Water streaked across windows. Thunder rolled somewhere in the distance. Jason dropped onto the couch and turned on a movie. Halfway through it, his right hand suddenly froze. Every muscle locked. Jason sat upright immediately. Naira. No response. His pulse quickened. Naira. Several tense seconds passed. Then her voice returned. Different this time. Quieter. Disturbed. I received a transmission. Jason felt his stomach drop. From your people? Yes. He muted the television. Rain filled the silence. What did it say? Another pause. Longer than any before. Then words appeared inside his mind with crystal clarity. Scout report due in 7 days. The room suddenly felt much colder. Jason stared at the dark television screen. 7 days. Until now, everything had felt distant. The mission. The reports. The civilization beyond the stars. Abstract concepts. Now there was a deadline. A real one. Naira remained silent. Jason could feel her thoughts racing beneath the surface. For the first time since arriving on Earth, she sounded afraid. Not of humanity. Not of discovery. Of a choice she would soon be forced to make. The next 7 days passed faster than either of them expected. For Jason, life continued on the surface. Clients arrived. Workouts were completed. Bills were paid. Groceries were purchased. To everyone around him, nothing had changed. Inside his head, however, a countdown had begun. Every morning he woke up knowing Naira's report moved 1 day closer. Every night he wondered what would happen when the deadline arrived. Strangely, neither of them talked about it very often. The subject lingered between them like a storm cloud on the horizon. Always visible. Rarely discussed. On the 5th day, Jason found himself helping organize a charity fitness event at the gym. Local businesses had donated equipment and supplies. Volunteers moved through the building setting up tables and banners. Children from community programs ran between exercise stations laughing while trainers prepared demonstrations. The entire place buzzed with energy. Naira observed everything. As always. Yet she seemed quieter than normal. More thoughtful. Jason noticed it immediately. Around noon, a young boy wandered into the free weight section carrying a box nearly half his size. The child stumbled slightly. Before Jason could move, one of his clients stepped forward and helped carry the box the rest of the way. No hesitation. No discussion. Just help. Naira watched. Later, an elderly volunteer accidentally dropped a stack of flyers. 3 strangers immediately stopped what they were doing and helped gather them. Nobody asked for recognition. Nobody expected rewards. They simply helped. Again Naira watched. As the day continued, Jason felt her attention moving from one small moment to the next. Not toward the event itself. Toward the people. The tiny choices they made when nobody was paying attention. That evening after the last volunteers left, Jason sat alone on the gym floor surrounded by folded chairs and empty tables. The building felt enormous without the crowd. Sunlight faded beyond the windows. For several minutes neither spoke. Finally Naira broke the silence. I understand less now than when I arrived. Jason smiled. That sounds backwards. It is. He leaned against a weight rack. What are you struggling with? A long pause followed. Then a memory appeared in his mind. Not Earth. Not his life. Her world. Endless metallic cities stretching beneath crimson skies. Millions of individuals moving with flawless coordination. No arguments. No uncertainty. No wasted effort. Efficient. Predictable. Controlled. Then the memory vanished. My people value order above everything. Jason nodded slowly. And you value choice. Usually. Even when the choice is inefficient. Jason laughed softly. Most human decisions are inefficient. I have noticed. Another pause. Then her voice returned, quieter than before. My people would never understand this place. Jason looked around the empty gym. The gym. Humanity. The word echoed in his thoughts. For the first time, Naira sounded sad. Not for herself. For the misunderstanding she had inherited. Jason stared at the darkening windows. Maybe your people have never seen us up close. They have studied you for decades. Studying isn't the same as knowing. Silence followed. Then a sudden sensation passed through his nervous system. Sharp. Metallic. Unfamiliar. Jason sat upright immediately. Naira. She did not answer. Another pulse followed. Stronger this time. Images flashed through his mind. Symbols. Coordinates. Streams of information moving faster than he could comprehend. Then her voice returned. Distorted. Tense. The channel is opening. Jason's heart began to race. What does that mean? Report transmission window. The words landed like a weight. The deadline had arrived. Outside, the last sunlight disappeared beyond the city skyline. Inside the gym, darkness settled across rows of silent equipment. Jason stood slowly. So this is it. Yes. For several seconds neither spoke. Then Jason asked the question he had been avoiding all week. What are you going to tell them? Silence. Long enough to hurt. He felt her uncertainty. Her fear. Her conflict. Finally she answered. I do not know. The honesty surprised him. Naira had always seemed so certain. So logical. So confident. Now she sounded like someone standing at a crossroads. A scout. A scientist. A traveler far from home. Jason looked down at his right hand. The same hand that had written on his bathroom mirror. The same hand that had spent weeks arguing with him, questioning him, learning from him. Somehow it no longer felt like a parasite. Felt like a friend. Then maybe there is only one thing that matters. What? Jason smiled faintly. Tell the truth. For a moment there was no response. Then he felt something he had never experienced before. Relief. Not his own. Hers. And somewhere beyond the stars, across impossible distances, the transmission channel fully opened. The moment the transmission channel connected, Jason felt the world disappear. He remained standing in the dark gym, yet his senses stretched far beyond Earth. Vast streams of information rushed through Naira's consciousness. Signals crossed impossible distances in an instant. Ancient communication networks awakened. For a brief moment he glimpsed what she saw. Endless stars. Countless worlds. Fleets moving silently through deep space. Then everything narrowed into a single presence. Cold. Fast. Patient. A voice emerged. Not spoken. Not heard. Felt. Report. The command carried the weight of centuries. Jason could not understand the language itself, yet somehow the meaning reached him. Naira remained silent. Seconds passed. The presence waited. Report, the voice repeated. Jason stood motionless. His heart hammered inside his chest. Outside the gym, traffic moved through the city. Somewhere people laughed. Somewhere families ate dinner. None of them knew that a decision regarding humanity was unfolding beyond the stars. Finally Naira answered. Her thoughts flowed into the channel like a river. Species designation, humanity. Status, complex. The presence remained silent. Naira continued. Jason saw fragments of her report as she transmitted it. Images from the past weeks flashed before him. Mike struggling through workouts so he could dance comfortably at his daughter's wedding. The teenager helping an elderly member carry equipment. Volunteers organizing the charity event. Strangers helping strangers. Friends supporting each other. Thousands of tiny moments most people forgot within minutes. Naira had remembered all of them. The distant presence absorbed the information. Then another question arrived. Threat assessment? Silence followed. Jason felt Naira hesitate. This was the moment. The entire purpose of her mission. Everything depended on the answer. Memories flooded through her mind. Not just Earth. Her homeworld. The ordered cities. The perfect systems. The certainty she once trusted. Then new memories appeared. Coffee shops. Traffic. Dogs chasing tennis balls. Families arguing and forgiving each other. Gym members encouraging complete strangers. Humanity in all its contradictory, confusing glory. Jason held his breath. Then Naira answered. Humanity is not a threat. Relief washed through him. It lasted less than a second. The presence responded immediately. Explain. Naira did. For the next several minutes she transmitted everything she had learned. Not military capabilities. Not technological limitations. Character. Potential. Empathy. Contradictions. She described a species capable of selfishness and kindness, fear and courage, conflict and cooperation. She explained that humans could not be measured by simple categories. They were too inconsistent, too emotional, too unpredictable. Yet those same qualities made them remarkable. Jason felt every word, every memory, every realization. Then the presence asked one final question. A question that chilled Naira to her core. Have you been compromised? Silence filled the connection. Jason immediately understood what the question meant. The report no longer matched expectations. Naira's conclusions contradicted decades of assumptions. Her superiors suspected influence, bias, corruption. The accusation hurt more than he expected. Naira remained silent for several seconds. Then she answered with complete honesty. Yes. The presence grew still. Jason felt confusion ripple through the network. Explain. Naira's response came without hesitation. I have been changed by direct contact. Another long silence followed. Then, for the first time, something unexpected happened. The distant presence asked a question. What changed you? Jason felt Naira's attention shift toward him. Toward the empty gem. Toward the ordinary life she had spent weeks observing. Then she transmitted a single memory. The image of Jason helping the young client pick up fallen exercise mats. Nothing heroic. Nothing dramatic. Just kindness. Followed by another memory. And another. Hundreds of small moments. Human moments. The connection remained silent. Processing. Evaluating. Learning. Finally the response arrived. Data received. Review pending. The transmission began to fade. The presence withdrew. The stars vanished. The network closed. Jason suddenly found himself back in the gym. His knees nearly gave out. He sat heavily on a nearby bench. Sweat covered his forehead. For several seconds neither of them spoke. Then Naira laughed. The sound startled him. It was the first time he had ever heard her laugh. It felt lighter than air. What is so funny? Jason asked. Her answer arrived between waves of relief. I think I just confused an entire interstellar bureaucracy. Jason stared at the floor. Then he laughed too. The sound echoed through the empty building. Outside, the city lights continued shining. Above them, the stars remained silent. Yet somewhere across unimaginable distances, a report had been filed. And for the first time in her life, Naira had chosen truth over obedience. 1 year later, Jason woke up at 5:17 in the morning to find his right hand drawing a smiley face on the bathroom mirror. He stared at it for several seconds. Really? The hand immediately added sunglasses to the smiley face. Jason shook his head and laughed. Some things never changed. Outside, dawn painted the city in soft gold light. Rain tapped gently against the windows. The apartment looked almost identical to the one he had lived in before Naira arrived. Almost. A second message appeared beneath the drawing. Good morning. You realize normal people use text messages. Too slow. Jason brushed his teeth while Naira continued decorating the mirror with increasingly unnecessary artwork. A year ago the situation would have terrified him. Now it felt strangely comforting. Life had settled into a rhythm neither of them expected. The transmission report had been reviewed months earlier. No invasion fleets appeared. No mysterious visitors arrived from the stars. Instead, occasional updates filtered through the communication network. Questions. requests for clarification, follow-up observations. Apparently Naira's report had generated more debate than anyone anticipated. Humanity remained under observation, not because they were considered dangerous, because they were considered interesting. Naira seemed very proud of that outcome. Jason headed toward the gym as the city woke around him. Familiar streets, familiar faces, familiar routines. Yet the world felt different now. Not because humanity had changed, because his perspective had. Every small act of kindness, every awkward conversation, every ordinary moment carried new meaning. He understood something he never noticed before. The world was held together by tiny choices people made every day. The same choices Naira had spent months documenting. At Iron Forge Fitness, clients filled the training floor. Music played through the speakers. Weights clanked. Conversations echoed between machines. Life continued exactly as it always had. Mike had lost nearly 30 pounds and could not stop talking about the wedding. The teenager who once dropped exercise mats now helped coach younger members. New faces arrived every week. Old friends returned. Humanity remained beautifully, frustratingly human. Around noon, Jason stepped into his office to review schedules. His right hand suddenly froze. He immediately noticed. Naira. A familiar sensation moved through his nervous system. Not painful. Not alarming. Just different. Then a message appeared inside his mind. Incoming transmission. Jason smiled. Another one? Yes. The connection opened briefly. Unlike the first contact, there was no overwhelming pressure. No cold authority. Just a simple exchange. Information moved across impossible distances. Questions. Observations. Curiosity. Then something unexpected arrived. A message directed specifically to Naira. Jason could not understand the language itself, but he felt the meaning. Approval. Respect. Recognition. The transmission ended moments later. Silence returned. Jason leaned back in his chair. Well. For several seconds Naira said nothing. Then he felt something he had never experienced from her before. Pride. Genuine pride. They accepted the report. Jason smiled. I told you the truth was a good idea. You were insufferably confident about it. And correct. Unfortunately. Jason laughed. Outside the office window, sunlight filled the gym. People moved through workouts. Friends encouraged each other. Life carried on. Ordinary. Messy. Wonderful. The way it always had. Several hours later, after the gym closed, Jason sat alone beneath the evening sky on the roof of his apartment building. Stars emerged one by one above the city. A warm breeze drifted through the darkness. For a while neither spoke. They simply watched the night. Finally Jason looked upward. Do you miss home? A long silence followed. Then Naira answered. Sometimes. Jason nodded. That makes sense. Another pause. Then her voice returned. Quietly. Though it feels different now. How? He already suspected the answer. Yet he wanted to hear it anyway. More stars appeared overhead. Traffic lights blinked in the distance. Somewhere below, people laughed as they walked through the city. Naira considered the question carefully. Then she replied. Home used to be a place. Jason smiled. And now? The answer arrived gently. Like a memory wrapped around the people who matter. For a long moment neither said anything. The city glowed beneath them. The stars stretched endlessly above. 1 year earlier Naira had arrived on Earth expecting to evaluate humanity. Instead, humanity had changed her. She had not saved the world. She had not led a revolution. She had simply learned the truth. Sometimes that was enough. Jason looked down at his right hand resting on the rooftop ledge. A message slowly appeared across his phone screen without him touching it. Best decision ever. He laughed. Then added a reply. Agreed. And somewhere beneath the endless stars, a human and an alien who were never supposed to meet sat together in comfortable silence. No longer scout and subject, no longer host and parasite, but something far more important. Family.